Welcome, everyone. We have round two with one of our most popular guests, Tony Holler, who teaches the Feed the Cats program and is I like to say, an elite speed coach. And we're talking about running. And the crazy things associated elite speed running coach, and so it's he teaches it in a way that for some is unique. But I saw a bunch of stuff that you actually did when spoke with had Carl Lewis there, and it's just the people that you're connecting with at a high level all subscribe to the stuff that you teach, and you see them teach it, and that's the interesting thing, which I find so unique. But it's one of those things where you're one of the first to kind of preach it out to the world, right? Because if you have unique skill sets as far as speed development, like Carl Lewis, right, coaching at the University of Houston. I think he's still at the University of Houston, or a lot of other elite speed coaches. When you're trying to get clients to come to you at an elite level, meaning Olympic level guys, sharing all those secrets for a long time really wasn't a thing they did. So you're really one of the first guys to really kind of share these kind of secrets, and then obviously you have your own twist on it that makes it elite, I think, and takes the development to another level. But it's great to have you back on, Tony. There's nobody out there doing what you're doing, and I say that genuinely, not just from a what you're teaching standpoint, but the way that you're also, I say, preaching it, to the world, sharing it with everybody. So it's great to have you back on.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I think that's just my coaching background. My dad was a coach for 47 years. I taught chemistry for 38. I'm a teacher, and it's really cool in the twilight of my life getting to share teaching secrets and to coach coaches. I love that phrase, coach coaches. And that's what I get to do right now.
It's so cool, the unique, and we talked about this on the previously before the show. You were talking about briefly about how important it is to really do your speed development before the season, and we were talking about how you're obviously getting ready in a few more weeks to go into the actual track season, but how important this pre-time is to really develop speed. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, we start today, and we don't start the actual track season until something like January 22nd or something like that. But this is a very important window because it's really hard to move the needle of speed during the season because you are so concerned with the health of your athletes. Health trumps everything. An unhealthy sprinter is a slow sprinter, or he's unavailable totally. So we cannot work 7 days a week, 2 hours a day and stay healthy. So we're so concerned with health. And then we're also concerned with our sprinters learning how to sprint for 22, 23 seconds or 48, 49, 50 seconds. And all my sprinters, whether they run the 100 or the 400, they are all going to train the same way in the off season, which starts today for me. And what that means is we never do anything more than 5 seconds. We are at performance level for 5 seconds, and then we rest and recover. We are doing nothing that to the outside observer would create a 400-meter runner. But last year at sectional, we ran a time in Illinois that no team had run in 7 years. So we are training 400 runners, but we're training them as sprinters first. And I think the correlation between, I do a lot of work in football and lacrosse and soccer now. Same thing is that if we spend the off season conditioning, and for the conditioning test, I hate that, that actually happens. We have to get in shape so that we can prove to the coach we're in shape on that first day. If we put all of our priority into getting in shape, aerobic conditioning, building a big aerobic engine, we cannot build speed at the same time. We really, really can't. And so what I preach is this idea that we are going to train at performance levels for short periods of time. It's It's counterintuitive as hell, because like when we're doing an X factor exercise and I ask my guys, like let's say we're doing pogo jumps. I said, when do we quit? And they go, about 5 seconds. I go, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And somebody says, well, actually, as soon as we feel a decline in our level of performance, like when we feel a hint of fatigue, we quit, which is totally contrary to everything that the three of us grew up with. No, when
absolutely.
we fatigue, that's when we got started. That's when
you were, push through it, right? Continue, keep grinding. You got to go until you fail and all that other kind of stuff. Just exactly. So opposite of what we were coached to do all the way through. All the way through.
And I think it is such a shared experience that when I talk like this to a room full of coaches, we are on common ground immediately. One of the first things you do as a speaker is to gain, gain acceptance, to get your audience to say yes. And so when I talk about my experiences with overtraining and constantly worrying about being in shape and not worrying about how fast and how explosive we can be, coaches lean in and say, that's my experience too.
Great point. That's a great point. And that's why I think one of the things that coaches have to continue to get out of is that thought process, because it's inhibiting in the speed sport. It's inhibiting how you're going to be able to get them to a peak level of performance. And your point is really, really, who does somebody want on their team? Do they want Tyreek Hill on their team to try and score touchdowns vertically down the field? Who can burst quickly for a very short time period, or do they want a cross-country runner to run wide receiver routes? Then, obviously the answer is pretty solid. So then the question always is, it's like, why do you train for cross-country practice? It's funny because when you talk about those things, one of the things over the last couple of years, but I actually started doing in my team, and I know Derek's team as well is applying. The team he coaches is applying the Feed the Cats program in some capacity. I'll let him talk about that as well. But when I do it with my youth team, we do all the important speed stuff right at the beginning now, and it's very brief. It's very brief. Probably the thing that takes probably the longest is probably like our skips and those kind of things, right? Because it's like a kind of a warm up, but we're obviously we try to focus them on doing it correctly and quickly versus, as kids like to do, they look at it as like a half screw around time period, right? So we've gotten them out of that, and so it's an important thing that we've been able to do with them. I thought it really helped them throughout the season, and I think that one of the things I always tell them is, we're at football practice, we're not at cross country practice. So if you want to be here to run all day long, there is another sport that you could actually do that at, and you would go do that there. And it's funny because what even go to like cross country. What does cross country people do to run a better 5K? They do timed miles. They don't do timed 5Ks. They do timed miles, right? Or time how they come down in a distance and they go faster, so they can. So even there, it's one of the things that it goes against what everybody's always been doing by trying to run longer. It makes no sense, and it's actually funny that like you think about things that you did as a coach in the beginning, or even when you were a kid and you were playing for somebody else, and you're like, wow, it's just so counterintuitive. But I did it with my son as well, and through the season, and we would sprint literally. I'm not kidding. My grass on the side of where my house is, and to probably about a 25-yard run of grass. Even though obviously we know track from what you talked about last time, track is obviously preferred, but he would do it in his track spikes, and so I could at least get some of that out of it, right? Because the football spikes have cleats in the back, and I don't. It's not good for getting you where you want to be. It's good for obviously for the games when you got to change direction, all that kind of stuff. But for sprinting, they end up starting to fall back of how they would run to change direction, right? So, so we would do that, and we're talking. I would tell them like, hey, we're gonna do 3 10-yarders, then we're gonna do 3 20-yarders, and we're going to time them, and we'll see how fast they are. And then he started getting creative. He would ask, like, because we have trees. So basically we established, it's not exact, right? But we established this tree to that tree. Okay, what's your best time so we know from what tree to what tree, because that's obviously exact, how much what his best time is. So we have that tracked down. So he already knows like what his best time is from tree to tree. And we're always trying to beat that. And then we add little different things in there. And, from a warm-up standpoint, we added the Deion, I call him the Deion Sanders because that's what he knows, right? But the band, we used to call them the band leaders. And, those kind of things. And in his warm-up and quick. And literally the whole workout, I'm not kidding. I tell him, hey, we got to do our speed work today. He's like, oh, how long? I'm like, I need 15 minutes, maybe 10. It might be 10. Great, let's go. I mean, he jumps right up. You know what I mean? Because he knows. I said, you're going to play Madden for the next 3 hours, okay?
Yeah.
Can I get 10 minutes here, 15 minutes? But those 15 minutes have helped him tremendously. And he's a longer, bigger kid. He plays quarterback. Longer, bigger kid. And I think I'm watching the turnover start to – and it's over time. Like you said, it's over time. So my whole thing was him. I don't care. The goal is that in 5 years from now, from doing this, we're where we start to need to be. It's not right now. It's not the spring. Each phase will get better, but it's not where you are at that point. It's where you are 5 years from now, and maybe when is he at the end of high school? 10 years from now, right? So that's the goal with it. Loves it, by the way. Absolutely loves it.
Well, you're doing a lot of things right. You're playing the long game. You're not. You already see that the Mamba mentality of 8 hours of training a day to get to be great is all mythology. Every great athlete, every great coach wants to tell you that they got it through hard work, and they'll never talk about talent, luck, fortune. Every Kobe Bryant was tall, and he had a dad that was an NBA player, and he was like the greatest high school player of all time. So he had some advantages. Now, I'm not saying he didn't work hard, but I'm telling you this, that if we base our training on the mythology of the great coaches and the great athletes, we are going to be wrong. But if you play the long game and you get kids to love what they are doing, there's an incredible thing that happens. My oldest son, just sent me a message today of his 7-year-old and 8-year-old boys making 100 shots out in the street.
It's awesome.
And after every 10, they wrote it down. Think about that. 7 and 8 years old, and they're already
conditioning.
Record, rank, and publish idea. And if you think about it, it turns into kind of like a game.
That's right.
100%. You have to make it competitive, right? It has to be competitive. There has to be some type of winner, loser, some type of that's just how kids are programmed. Like competition. Look, we all did it too, right? Like a relay race was a lot better than running across standing on the line and just, hey, we got to go down and back, down and back. When you start to add that level of competition, now you can push it to another level.
So correct. And I tell people, people wonder, like in our workouts, we record, rank, and publish everything. I put it on my website. I tweet out the link to the spreadsheet. And I tell our kids that 8 billion people in the world are checking their times every damn night. And obviously that's mythology. But the idea is that what we do matters and is significant. And I get the question once in a while, do you ever have like parents that are like objecting to their kids' performance being made public? Because like in chemistry, I could never publish test.
Oh, hell
no. No,
we could never put that. Listen, the whole posting of a grade after a test went away a long time ago. And you're talking about and I come from the special education world, coach. So that's a whole different beast in itself. But those days are long gone of here's the grades. I'll post it outside the room. Let me know. No.
And I found that my kids, I've not one time have I ever had a parent say, I want my kid taken off that list because it should not be public. This is private. Yep. And the kids that don't respond to that type of competitive stuff, I say, there's a place for you. you could go play in the band.
That's it.
And that's not being negative. And then somebody told me, like, hey, the band's competitive too, coach. And I go, well, maybe it is. I've never been in the band, but there's first chair, second chair. And so if we're not competitive as humans, I hate to say it, but I just think less of you,
I think that it's competing comes naturally. It's funny. I do a podcast with Maria Conlin, who won 3 NCAA titles as a player with UConn women's team, and she talks about and it's the same kind of principle. She talks about when you shoot a basketball, like you said, it has to be purposeful. She was telling me a story, and I was like, you know what, like it's the whole philosophy is starting to catch on in multiple sports, right? Because I'm sure when she played originally, playing for Gino Ariam in the beginning, and she was telling me how Gino has changed so much and how he does things. But I'm sure he tortured them in the old days. You know what I mean? Now he's probably evolved his practice. But she was talking about how purposeful practice is the most important thing. Purposeful. So when you're shooting 3-pointers, it's not I took 500 shots of 500 3-point shots. It's how many did you make? Okay. And it's shooting a goal, having a goal and the purpose of shooting. So if you're going to shoot and you're going to try and make 23 pointers, that's what you're working to do. And then you get to that goal and you stop. You literally stop, right? Which is hard for people to think, right? Like, I make 23 pointers. That's it. That's that part, either that part of practice or that's all I'm doing for the day. Okay. And because what happens is you get into this whole thing where you start to then wear yourself down because you think, I make 23 pointers. If I want to be Kobe Bryant, I've got to make 100 3-pointers. Well, now you're going to be there all day because your technique is going to go to crap and you're not going to be able to shoot the same way that you could before. You're wearing yourself out, and then you're teaching yourself to do things incorrectly. And that's what I've learned from what we're talking about and how it applies to all the different sports. It's amazing. I mean, one of the things that Derek with the team he coaches, and I'll let you talk about that too. They have this it's like an iPhone basically that has like scouting plays on it, right? And it allows them to get a lot more plays in a very, very short period of time, which allows them to get better in much more short period of time, which allows those kids to not have to be at practice as much longer and perform better. It's all along those similar types of philosophy, right? Derek, talk a little bit more about that. The same thing.
So what it basically is, it's called Go Route, and it's a company. It's great. It's basically what it is it's basically an iPhone. Right. And or like a mini template that literally goes right around your waist in practice. And it's basically the scout card of what you're doing. And all you have to do is look down and the coaches we upload all the plays and go. And it literally allows us to go that much faster, which now obviously cuts down on the amount of steps, all the stuff that we're doing. It's efficiency, over all of that quantity, where now we're getting through a lot more plays in a lot less time. Kids are out there a lot less, you know what I mean? And now physically, we've just seen it go. I mean, we're almost doubling in our amount of plays that we can run throughout that, while cutting down on their, you know what I mean, the having them to be out there for hours running around doing all this kind of stuff. It also allows us to know, like, hey, if one guy has to run this far on one play, well, now we can get another guy up ready to go, already looking down at the next play, ready to know what's going on to get in and go. So it's been just phenomenal. Also, what's great for us, coach, is our indoor and outdoor track coach is our freshman football coach as well. And is big into, Tony, he's using every bit of what you're doing. In terms of, all of that, all the feed the cats stuff, from the warm up to, the sprinting at the beginning of practice and then tapering off as we go. And it's really shown a lot of improvement from our guys. They've been healthier. They've been able to go faster and just perform at a better level through the entire process. But like we said, it's a year round thing, right? We're not just like scattering it in here. We're not doing it here. Like, we're fully diving into the culture. And I mean, he's seen his indoor and his outdoor come like from one season to the next, just like you're talking about an uptick that's been just phenomenal. And then for us, most of our guys run either indoor or outdoor. So you're having football guys kind of doing the same thing throughout the whole process. And now they're into it. And now when those guys come in from middle school, it's like, hey, this is how we do things. And, you know, after that initial, like, what? We don't, that's not, you know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, just buy in. And then when they start to see the improvements, now, okay, we're all in. And it's just been great for us.
Yeah. As soon as, you know, data is so important really for two reasons. One is it really motivates athletes. When you run faster, jump higher, jump further, you lift heavier, all those things, you want buy-in, you better write it down. You better record, rank, and publish. That's how you gamify it, make it more fun, but it also motivates athletes. And then it also sells coaches that you're doing the right thing, you know, because you'll always have people on your staff that are going to think you're a communist or something.
They think you're crazy. They're like, oh, you're crazy. Hey, listen, I always say, like, yeah, they want to, like, you know, they want to ostracize you. Like, let me send you to that island over there, buddy. Like,
it's almost
the lonely road to be great at something, though, isn't it? Like, you know, when you want to, I'm with you, coach. Like, I'm with you, man.
You're not going to convince the people on the other side unless you show them the data. When you show them the data, because we're going to measure meaningful things to make meaningful things more meaningful. And when we start to do that, our athletes get motivated. Our coaches that are on the other side of the political divide here will move over to our side. And the thing that when you were talking that is so important to me is it makes the coach's life better. 3-hour practices are a family killer. Football coaches are all God, country, God, family, country, blah, blah, blah. And I always say, if you have to say all those things, then you're trying to convince yourself because you're probably a workaholic that practices 3 hours. You sit around bitching about your players for an hour in the coach's office. Then you go home in a bad mood. And the only way you get to sleep is if you drink a lot. And you aren't a good human, you know, but I think when you condense practice and create a performance level type of program, coaches are reborn. I'm 65 and I tell people that I feel the same age as a coach as when I was at 35. I feel that young, and I would not have felt that young if I was still coaching the way I did until I was 40.
Correct. And I think what's also is, look, the young kids, what they feel, I mean, not even young kids, your players, they see right through you. They know if you're shot, if you're agitated, if you're in a good mood. Like, kids see right through all the bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're at not your top best as a coach every single day, right, then how can you expect your athletes to do that, right? Or how can
they will reflect you, Derek. Those kids will reflect you. And guess what? You will reflect them.
And that's what I said. Like, I've always said, like, you are a direct reflection, especially within football, right? Because guys, you know, look, you have your overall head coach, you have your coordinators and whatnot, but as a position coach, right, like where you're really with those 7 to 10 kids, like on the regular, they're a direct reflection of what you are as a coach. So if that guy's out there or if, look, maybe your guy isn't even like, you know, maybe he's not even a starter or whatever. If he's the guy that's screwing around on the sideline or the guy that's a problem in the classroom, well, to me as the position coach, like, that's on you, because you're supposed to set a certain standard, even within the team standard, that needs to be held accountable. And that's when I think, you know, you can really take your coaching to a different level, is when you're invested in your kids on that, you know, to that extreme, I guess you want to say, maybe, but like, if you care and you're about to bring it every single day, then your kids will start to bring it every single day. And they'll understand that, look, maybe that position group does that, but we do it this way. Right. And I think with that short, intense, high octane bursts where they can take a step back and which is what football is, right? A play is 7 seconds of full speed chaos, like, and now, we get a break. There's not many other sports that are like that, right? Think about basketball, you're up and down a court, soccer, you're up and down, lacrosse, football is 7 seconds of full speed break. So condition your athletes the proper way. And I think that you've seen that start to kind of come around a little bit more, but you still have these guys that don't believe it or that don't want to do it. And then when you show them the numbers, there's always that one guy that's like, well, buddy, just look at the numbers here and see how your athletes are increasing and not getting injured and doing all the things with, okay, maybe this is a little different, but look at the data itself. And like you said, data is what proves it.
Yeah, the GPS data that's coming out now, we're starting to learn why Feed the Cats or sprint-based football teams are so healthy. And healthy means fast. Like if you're unhealthy, you're slow. I think speed is a great barometer of health. And these healthy teams that are winning, we're starting to look at like a GPS data, and almost everything we see is like 90% of all football injuries are the direct result of load.
Yeah. Load management.
And you think, oh, maybe that's why pitchers are on pitch counts. Oh, that's maybe why Popovich got 19 years out of Tim Duncan because they sat him down in the back-to-back nights sometimes. And Popovich got into big trouble doing that. Oh, that's maybe why like almost every NFL team rotates defensive linemen now. What do you want to do? Do you want to run to death like cross-country guys so they can play every play at half speed? Or do you want them full speed, big and fast and violent and enthusiastic, and they sit out every other play? So that load management will make them play better and they'll stay healthier. And I just think with everything, I mean, I feel so strongly about it. I almost get preachy sometimes, and I need to back
preach,
that
coach, preach.
I need to back that down because people don't like to be preached at. But
I'll give you a couple like real life examples. So I coach in a youth football program, a team system that we have a 9U, 10U, 11U, 12U, and 14U. The only team without a major injury was our team. Now, some of it could be luck, obviously, but I see all these teams running the guys around the field over and over and over again. And we never do any of that, ever. Like, there's no sitting there straight. We come right out, the cones are out, they do their change of direction, they move on to the next thing. They move, and it's like that's how practice starts. Like when they go and get their. I mean, this is completely counter. If you watch our practice and watch other people, you'd be like, that seems crazy to most regular quote unquote coaches, because when they go get a drink, we don't even like most coaches go get a drink. Don't say anything. We don't care what they do until we're ready for them to come back. As long as they don't they're 9 years old. As long as they don't go, all over the place. Stay within the area. You can talk to each other, hang out. Boom, whistle comes back. They come back and they go to work. They're getting ample break. Then they come back. They're expected to do. I learned from Derek with the with what they're doing. We were putting plays, literally drawn out the plays. I was trying to teach what I taught last year with memorize what these words mean. I drew the plays basically, on the computer, and I put the plays in there, and they had multiple options with each play, and it was drawn out. Everyone knew what they had to do. Everybody in the whole entire field. It went faster. They were much more efficient on offense. The defense coordinators, like, how can I invite next year and put that into my system? How can I do that with what you're doing on defense for next year? So I can show you how to do it. It's an easy way. But I'll teach it to you in the offseason. But I learned that from what Derek was doing with his, what they were doing with his guys, and I'm like, you know what? The light bulb just went off. I'm like, why am I wasting my time trying to get 9-year-olds to memorize things? They'll learn the game as they do these plays. They'll learn the routes as they do these. They'll learn the blocking scheme as they do this. Trying to make them memorize words that they're going to have to relearn when they go to high school anyway, because someone's running a different system. And after when they get to high school, if they play in college, they got to relearn a new system anyway when they go to college. Let's get them playing football, right, and do it quickly. But those kind of things were really interesting. And in college, the most surprising team in the country is Indiana, right? They're 10-0. Well, I've read Kurt Signetti's practice philosophy, and all the kids on his team said it took them a while to get used to. They were used to practicing 3 hours in high school or wherever they were in college or whatever. The guys who transferred in are the high school players. They go for an hour and 40 minutes. College.
Yeah.
Okay, an hour and 40 minutes. And the old traditional way is, they have the horn and they blow the horn. When he feels that he's got enough done, he just moves on to the next thing. He doesn't have horns. He doesn't want guys looking at the clock. Okay, he doesn't want them looking over. 5 minutes in this drill. Oh, my goodness, I'm in minute 1. Okay, I got 4 more minutes. Now what do? They pace themselves. That's what happens, right? If they look up and the drill is only, a quarter of the way done, they're a minute into it, they're like, oh, my God. So they start pacing themselves. He doesn't want them pacing themselves. He wants them to go fast, be efficient, be done. And is there a coincidence that a guy with that philosophy has guys that want to play for him?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I was in a football program once in Tennessee where we had a very successful old school coach. I mean, we did we were on the field 8 hours a day for the first week, 8 hours a day. And we had good players. So we made it to the championship game in Tennessee, got beat by Murfreesboro, Riverdale, I'm sorry, in the championship game. Next year, a Hall of Fame coach comes in and he's a guy who says, we're going to practice 2 hours a day. And there was almost a mutiny. And they're like, we cannot get all of our stuff done. And he said, well, you better cut out some of the stuff that is not as important as the stuff you have to put in. My point is a 200-page book is better than a 400-page book because you cut out the crap. The
stuff.
Same thing, the stuff, the filling, the stuff that didn't have
fluff,
to be
right?
there.
I mean, it's just nonsense. It's like, look, when you really want to get down to it, cut it down to what needs to be in there. And if you can't do that, then that's on you. You know what I mean? You need to prioritize and structure, which means planning, right? Because maybe you don't have to hit this every single day like you do, right? But maybe when you do, you got to be a little more dialed into it. Or there's ways to do it, but you have to put the work in, right? And that's really what it comes down to. I want to jump
in. I believe that the longest, hardest practices happen with coaching staffs that are lazy and they have not planned well.
Correct.
And there's nothing easier.
Couldn't agree more, Coach.
There's nothing easier than getting your kids tired. That is any fool can get another fool tired. Now, the hardest thing in the world is to edit, is to cut it down, prioritize, not ask what should we add, but what should we take out?
Correct.
And even if you're practicing for an hour and 45 minutes, my question is, could we get it done in an hour 30?
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things, so when Dave and I linked up and we started coaching together, that was our entire thing was hey man, fast, efficient, on, off. This is not a marathon type of thing, right? Because that's just not what we want to do. Like you said, it's family killers, it's program killers. When the kids realize hey, I only got to be here or not, you know what I mean? The wording is off, right? Coach, when I have to dial in, right? Just I compare it to charging their phone. You come in here, plug in for a good hour, 40, whatever we got to do. By the time you leave fully charged with more energy than you did when you showed up, because fast, efficient, on point, let's get out and go. I'm not here to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time, right? And that takes a little bit of conditioning to get used to. And more so other coaches and administrators than it is or parents, because you have some parents, they're the first one to complain about long practices, but when you're losing and that, you know what I mean, it changes the whole thing. Oh well, we're not, and then it's, hey, we're only out here for an hour and 40. Oh well, you should be out there longer. Okay, well, look what we got done in an hour and 40, and now we're good and we're winning games, and your kid's coming home without injuries and he's rested and he wants to go to practice. Because I think the one thing, Coach, and you touched on it before with the load management, especially as you get to the higher levels, now players start to respect you as a coach because you care about their well-being, right? And that individual, that little bit of individual aspect of, hey man, I know you're running a lot of verticals right now. I'm going to throw this guy in here for, a couple plays too, so he can get some work. And now I'm going to save your legs for you. I think kids and as they progress at the higher levels, that investment into me as a person really takes those guys to a next level. Like, hey, I'm going to run through a wall for this guy.
One of my really best friends, a guy named Steve Jones, he won 5 straight state championships in Wisconsin, 70 straight games. He's now in he's now on the Packers sideline, travels with the team. But he wrote a book called Twin Thieves, and it's one of the best leadership books I've ever read. It's especially important for football. But he says there's just one letter that differentiates get to and got to. Just one letter. And I think that we want practice to be I get to practice. It's not I got to practice. I say that kids are really good at what they like and they're obsessed with what they love. And so if we could create practice that was just not just the shit that you had to go through to get to play in the game.
Yep.
But practice that was meaningful, significant. It seemed like it's about as much fun as playing the game of football. All of a sudden, everything changes in the way a coach has to deal with players. You don't have to curse them anymore. You don't have to push them. Steve Jobs says that if you really love something, you don't have to be pushed. You feel a pull. The vision pulls you. So it's just a whole different way of doing things. And David, you're talking about the other side. One of the curses of my teachings is that once you experience this way of doing things, it's hard to tolerate the other way. When you see those teams, I mean, you feel sorry. You're like, thank God my boy's not out there, but I feel sorry for the kids that are. And it's awful.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. This is, and Derek knows this because I told him this. And this has nothing to do with whether our program wins more than this other program or not. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the experience. So 4 of our kids, including my son, were on an all-star team. Okay. And the guys were really nice guys running it. The first day I watched practice, it went for 2.5 hours. They ran one play. Okay. They didn't have a plan, no practice plan. I then emailed the coach and said, can I try and help you guys a little bit? And now I was very limited to what I could do, because I wasn't in charge. But my kids, almost after the first day, until I said I would try to help out a little bit, which I was limited in what I could do. I made it a little better, but I can't say I made it a lot better. But they wanted to quit the all-star game. Okay, so think about that. An honor that was bestowed on these 4 kids, including other kids, by the way, that were there too. And you could ask probably almost every one of the kids there, other than kids that maybe played in that system or a system like that, where they did absolutely nothing for extended periods of time. I mean, all kids did was stand around. Okay, really nice guys, really good guys, but they did not know how to run things. Okay, one of the guys is actually not just a youth coach, but coaches at the high school level, which I could not believe. Okay, I was shocked. I thought he was a youth coach. I was like, oh, this youth kid doesn't know what he's doing. It turns out coach at the high school level. Okay, I was shocked by this. All right. So anyway, the point was this. Kids who were all-stars did not want to be in the all-star game because practice was torture and boring. That's the only way I can explain it. Torture. It wasn't like they ran around. Like, you really didn't run them or anything that much because it's all. But torture meaning they had to stand there, do nothing 3/4 of the time, and boring. Okay. And I could tell you the highlight of their practices when they were out because they were standing around doing nothing 3/4 of the time, talking to me, and we were just having kind of conversations. Just think about that. I'm coaching and I'm having conversations with my kids while practice is going on. I mean, think of how poor that is, right? So now it's you. In all fairness, guys are volunteers. They don't really understand. But my whole thing is that more guys have to be able to do what you're doing, trying to teach these guys so they can understand. The most important thing is planning your practice about what you want to do. I don't care what it is you want to do. I could care less. If you want to do 10 jumping jacks and then do handoffs, make it efficient and fast. I don't care what it, you know what I mean? Obviously, the better you are at teaching things, the better your system for what you want to run, the better your team will do. But plan. The problem guys don't have in every sport, including track and field. I used to laugh at this. There would be guys that would coach track and field. What's your plan for practice? Oh, I'll figure it out when I get to the track. What? Like when I was a jumps coach, I knew what we were going to do. And I was probably, this goes back about, I haven't coached track since 2007 or 6. But I knew what I wanted to do. I had a plan for what it was. And we were at it. We were done. This is long before Feed the Cats. I had no idea that I was doing this correctly. I just had no attention span, okay? So it was really more of that. I just zero attention span, zero desire to stay there all day long and practice, okay?
You're a cat. You're a cat. You're a cat.
Zero. And that's how I kind of was as an athlete. I'm sure Derek was like that as an athlete, right? Probably why you rejected playing quarterback over time, because you just wanted to go out there and get the ball, right? Because all the meticulous part that took forever, the way he was teaching. But anyway, the point is that I realized that you had to make sure they wanted to come to jumps practice. I was the jumps coach. Like, it wasn't like the same exact glory that you got from running the 100-meter dash, okay? Even though I was also the sprints coach, I could get them there for the short sprint stuff because we do block starts and it was quick also. But they knew they would get the jumps. Like, sometimes you had a bad day and you didn't hit your mark, So there were things that frustrated some people. But we made it so quick and efficient and like just focused on what we had to do, and we got out of there. I would be walking out. I'm not kidding. Practice would start at 3. After we did our warm-up with the team, quote unquote. And my father was the head coach, by the way. He was old school at the time. And it's funny because he now evolved. He doesn't do any of that stuff now. But and he's 85. But we used to do jumping. We used to do all the stretches. The warm-up took longer than my whole entire jump practice. My jump practice might have been 30 minutes. Might have been. Maybe less. Okay, our warm-up took 30 minutes. So I was gone at 4 o'clock. I'd be walking out, and my father would be like, "You guys are done?" He's like, "I hope they jump well." I'm like, "They will jump well." I had, 2 guys. At one time, I had 5 guys over 21 feet in the long jump. Okay, wow. And they were good. They were good athletes. They were good athletes. They had to be good athletes, obviously, really. But they liked doing jumps practice. I had so many kids that wanted to jump. There were kids that wanted to jump, obviously, for some of them, just because practice was over at 4. So they had a good time. I'm not kidding. I want to be a jumper. I said, "Well, why do you be a jumper?" "Well, I heard your practice is quick and it's fun." Literally, these kids had no chance of placing ever. But they wanted to do it. They wanted to be. That's why they wanted to be. They're on the track team. They need a sport, and they were like, "I'm going to go do this. If this is going to be my activity, and it'll be fun." And they had a great time. And I didn't know all that kind of stuff back then. I definitely was doing it because I had ADD as far as my style of coaching, but it really turns out that most kids feel the same way that I felt about sports. I want to play. If you're running sprints, you want to see how fast you are. That's it.
And I think that's what makes football difficult too, right? Is because you practice way more than you play and you train for way longer. And if you really think about it, you get an opportunity once a week for 2.5, 3 hours to play in a game. And if you're a certain type of player, you don't even really you only get to play maybe one side or maybe just a couple plays. Like when you really cut it down to the nitty gritty football, you do not play a lot at all. So this stuff needs to be enjoyable. There needs to be a competitive edge to absolutely everything. And otherwise, you're not going to get full buy-in, and you sure as hell aren't going to get everything you can out of that player, person, whatever you need. It has to be, you have to do something to make it that way.
I think we owe that to kids, guys.
100%.
They have one chance to go through it. I really feel sorry for the football-only kids. They play, some of them play 9 games all year long.
That's it.
The other 356 days is like training and practice. So if training sucks, but it's the the suck that we have to go through to get to play in the games, I don't want 98% of my kids' life to be miserable.
No.
I want them to have the best chance to be athletic and to have a chance to play good football. And even if they're not great players, at least let them feel the nature of the game in practice.
100%.
Talk about too. So you have the model, like the different components that you have broken up into your training model, and which has includes the meets, includes or slash games, and then it has the different elements to the training. To talk about that a little bit.
Well, I say that I teach a way to cook, and the recipe has to evolve. If Feed the Cats was the end point, I could be called a charlatan, like a guy selling snake oil or something like that. Mm-hmm. But instead, I'm coaching the parameters. I'm coaching the mindset, the way to cook. And as we could all get a recipe. If we got a recipe from our great grandmother that made the best spaghetti sauce in the world, it would never taste as good as hers, because she knew how to cook and we don't. She knew the nuance of the ins and outs. And so it's interesting. I just heard the guy that has probably publicized sprint-based football more than anybody, Brad Dixon. They were ahead in the second round of the playoffs, 40-0 at halftime, totally dominated their opponent. And he texted me yesterday and said, I didn't tell you, but we didn't wear pads all week. Like, what? You didn't wear pads all week? No, right. We didn't wear pads all week.
To a football coach, that's like, you know what I mean? That's unbelievable.
And they went out and they were up 40-0 in a second round playoff game at halftime. And then another coach who was in the playoffs asked me about a weekly schedule for, once again, in Illinois, last week we were in the second round of the playoffs. And he said, what would you do? In terms of, I said, well, I would train speed twice. Remember, when you make speed the priority, it doesn't mean it's the majority. Mm-hmm. That, as you guys know, it can be that 15 minutes that replaces that BS 30 minutes of warm up that you do. It can really, and by doing that, you can literally be faster at the end of the season than before. You can literally be healthier at the end of the season than you were before the season. All those things go together. So he asked me, and I said, they just play a Saturday game and they have a Saturday game coming up. And it may have shocked him, but he basically had Monday through Friday to take care of. And what I told him is, you've got to pick 2 days and give your team off days.
Yeah.
What? 2 days off in a playoff game? Well, guess what? If they have Monday off, you practice on Tuesday. If you have Wednesday off, and then you practice Thursday, pregame Friday, those 3 practices will be so much better than the 5 practices that you would have had. Your kids will be faster and fresher for the speed workouts. I don't know. You guys remember how Wednesday was, when Wednesday's practice was over, we'd be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
We're getting close to game time, baby. Well, they can have that feeling all week. And they go into that game fast and ferociously enthusiastic. And the other thing that people really have a hard time believing is that they think that this way of coaching and playing football is soft. Mm-hmm. And the 8 teams that won state championships last year with the Feed the Cats approach, sprint-based football approach, if you said that their team played soft, you might get punched, because they are not soft people, and they hit. I really think that when Lombardi said that fatigue makes cowards of us all, I think if you put a tired team out on the football field, they're soft. They're soft. They may have practiced 4 hours a night, but they're soft because they're not fresh and enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. And they may yell and scream and bang their heads on lockers before the game. You may think they're ready, but their batteries are drained. And that's not the way we perform at our best. And that's not the way we, learn to love. We want them to love football, not just the games under the lights.
No doubt about it. And the speed development aspect of it is so underappreciated. It's mind blowing. To me, it's still. I mean, we're at 2024, and coaches over and over again in football, college, tell the high school coaches exactly who they're recruiting, what kind of guy they're recruiting. A fast athlete. They tell them over and over and over again. And I'm not look. Some of these coaches are great, as far as wins and losses, are great coaches, okay, from that standpoint. But the ones who don't understand that is the whole key are the kids are not going to get rid. And parents don't parents tell me this all the time in recruiting, and I feel bad telling them this, but it's the truth. You're really good. This is what your 40 time is. They're going to go find a guy, at minimum, that is that good, that has a faster 40 time. So the bottom line is, it's not that they're not taking you because they can't find a guy as good that is faster. So he's not as good but faster. No, they're going to find a guy that's as good, that's faster. It has changed recruiting. It is no longer. I had this discussion with a couple of parents this weekend, and they when you talk to them, when you tell them, they do understand it. But most people are not telling them this. It makes sense. In the old days, before social media, if I was Lafayette University, okay, and I was in Pennsylvania, I recruited the Northeast. There wasn't the capabilities to step outside of the Northeast because it costs too much money to recruit outside of the Northeast. I have to figure out a relationship with the high school coaches. I don't know anybody, in California per se. I got to see if they're academically good enough. Blah, 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 blah. Well, now with social media, they're finding you. They're finding you. As highly recruit, as much as the kids all want to go to Oregon or Miami or Ohio State, just as many kids, because parents want kids to get good education, are now trying to be football players at Princeton and Lafayette. And I tell parents so, because I'm good friend with the Princeton coach. I'm friendly with the Harvard coach, I'm talking about the head coach. And they tell me they are getting kids that they've never, ever had want to come to their university for, because social media has allowed them to be able to easily reach out to them, and it's easily for them to reach out. So it makes speed even more a premium. No matter what level you're going to, I can go, and if I'm not happy with the recruit guy I have on my board, I can make an active thing to go find somebody else around the country that does what this guy does, but faster. And that's.
I was going to capitalize on one part.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's the wide receiver that needs to be fast. I would argue every single position. If you watch the game last night, which is an amazing second half last night, with the Lions coming back, and Penny Sewell is one of the best offensive tackles in the league, and they can really highlighting this guy. And obviously, his size is. They're always 6'5" or 6'6". Always. If you're 6'3", you're too short. They're always 315 to 330. If you're 290, you're too light. If you're 280, you're too heavy. So among good players that fit into that size category, Sewell runs a 4'8". He runs a 4'8". Guess what happens if there's a guy that has just as good of tape, just as good of, like good blocks and, blah, 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 but he runs a 5'5". He doesn't even get drafted.
Nope.
And you guys know, you guys have been around the bigs before. You guys know that a high school 260-pound kid probably ain't running a 5'5".
Oh God, no.
They're run 5.9 or 6 flat. And guess what? They never speed train. They
Never.
live and eat. And
I gotta get big. I gotta get big, like muscle. I gotta put this on. I gotta do that. Like they
100%.
don't. It's not
And
it's not a thing.
Is if you're fast, you're athletic. Let me hit on two of the reasons why people argue against speed. One, football is an acceleration sport. Correct. It's 100% acceleration, but the best way to become a better accelerator is to get faster. Max velocity leads to better acceleration. Number two, and Tony Villani is a very good friend of mine, and he's maybe the best footwork coach out there. He's selling a ton of shred mills right now, which is a great, great thing. And he and I have really become good friends. And you wouldn't think we would, because he used to kind of talk against speed, because he knew for a fact that the game was played almost always at between 12 and 17 miles an hour, 12 to 17. So people took that as meaning, oh, so you don't have to learn how to run 22, 23 miles an hour. And he is absolutely adamant now that no, you need to be a 23 mile an hour guy to be efficient, to be athletic enough to play after play at between 12 and 17. And the reason why you have to play between 12 and 17 is because you have to change directions. And if you're going 100 miles an hour,
stop and start a little bit. You got to go side to side here. You got to, brake.
Yeah, you can't turn right if you're going 100 miles an hour. You just can't do it. You have to slow your car down to 30 in order to make a right-hand turn. Well, so football is played at very controlled speeds, but the ceiling of speed is still really important. And slow people just do not play football very well.
I muted myself. There's no doubt about it. And it's one of the things I learned when I was an NFL agent for 6 years goes exactly to your point. And it was really, really interesting. We first were going and recruiting guys, the fact that they were a great quote unquote player. You know what I mean? And this guy is great. His numbers were great. His stats were great. And we were getting burnt because not as many of the guys we wanted to get in got in. And then we shifted our recruiting of guys to, and I'm talking about not just the speed guys, the speed position guys, but the like tight ends and defensive line, to guys who were fast, meaning and especially any guy that played running back, wide receiver, defensive back, even linebacker. If we could get a track time on them, like from high school, that was how we recruited them. If their track time was in the 100-meter dash or whatever event they did that was a sprinting event was not good, we didn't take them because we realized very quickly after a couple of years of doing it that we were just getting burnt over and over again, investing in a guy that goes and runs a 4.6 40. And it's not that a 4.6 isn't good for a high school player, but for the NFL, that ain't gonna cut it.
Nah, yeah, that ain't gonna cut. That's what you have linebackers running that stuff at now.
And when we had use this as a great example, we had Trey Edmonds, whose brothers were both first round picks after him, but we had Trey Edmonds, and Trey Edmonds had a lot of injuries in his career. He had a great freshman year at Virginia Tech, but then he was hurt. He transferred to Maryland. Did decently well, but got hurt his senior. Okay. We saw his track times. And in high school, he was like 10.7 or something, and like I think 21 something in the 200 in high school. Anyway, as a running back, he was 215 pounds, 220 pounds. We knew that he was going to go run a great 40. Okay, yes, we set him up with a speed coach and everything like that. That obviously helped. But we knew just because of what he ran in track in high school that he was going to go and run a good 40. And that whatever everyone had him rated in, he was going to make a team. And he was going to. So he went and he ran 4.49 at 220 pounds. 4.49 for the scout. And he went from a guy that was like, oh, there's, he's not, his brothers are going to be first round. But, he was injured. He got picked up. He made a team. He lasted 7 years in the NFL. 7 years he lasted in the NFL. Okay. And was playing a ton. And that was always like the whole thing that you realize is like how important speed is, and how important it is to be able to be fast and to develop those things to do so. And of course, oh, by the way, because he was a track runner and he ran 100 meters and 200, when he was training for his pro days, he understood what the speed coach was teaching him. He understood the importance of it. So those guys who ran track and ran in good programs had an understanding of things too as well that was different. So when you were actually training them, those things made sense to them. So they scaled up more quickly than other people as well. Like they scaled up where guys who did not run track or did not understand how to come out of the blocks or start, right? That takes time to learn. That's why I say, like, when I do sprints in my backyard, my son is like, how do I start? What do I do? You want me to start down? You want me to start up? I said, well, what are you eventually going to have to do? He says, start down. Start down. Don't worry if your technique's not good now. We'll slowly start to teach you to, but you're going to get the feeling of what it takes to come out fast. And once you learn that feeling, then you'll get better and better at your starting technique. You'll learn how to drive off your front foot. You'll learn how to punch through better with the back. You'll learn all those kind of things that will help you be more explosive over time, right? So even though you're starting down now and you're just learning it, you're not generating the speed you'd like to, you start to feel these are things that especially kids who are decent athletes, they figure things out. We underestimate what a kid can figure out.
Absolutely.
We underestimate. You put them in that position and tell them, okay, well, this is what I want you to be able to do. Start to figure it out. And then I'll coach you along the way. I'll correct the technique. Okay. I'm not going to let you get in bad habits, but people overestimate their ability to coach and underestimate the athlete's ability to figure things out.
Yeah, and two things that I think are really important insights about the recruiting process, whether it's college or professional. One is that not only are track times important now, but I'm here to tell you there are many college coaches that are so knowledgeable about track times. They subscribe to a place called Tracking Football, good friends of mine. And the deal is this: if you didn't run track in high school, that's a red flag. Because
absolutely, 100%,
is that people who can win races run track. It is just absolutely never happens that your fastest guy just wants to lift all spring. They don't
doesn't work like that.
No. So if you did not throw the shot, throw the discus, long jump, triple jump, high jump, run the sprints, run the relays, if you did not find an event that you were dominant in, you are probably not a dominant athlete. So that's really important. Here's another insight. Every player that enters the NFL, let's say Aaron Rodgers, when he entered at 22, is he going to get faster as he ages? The answer is no. You are going to fight aging from the time that you get into the NFL. So what they found is this: people who enter the NFL slow get slower, and they don't stay in the NFL long.
No.
Whereas if you enter as Penny Sewell or Tristan Wirfs or any of the best tackles, they're running 4.8 or 4.9 in the 40 at a weight of 320 pounds, and they're multi-sport athletes in high school and all that kind of stuff. Those guys will probably last 10 to 15 years. The slow guy who came in same size, pretty good player, he's out in 3 because he's an old man at 25. And it's all because of speed. When I watched Aaron Rodgers play yesterday, he got caught by a 320-pound lineman. Like Aaron would have lost the 100 meters to this guy by 20 meters. I mean, this guy is so much faster, easily. But when Aaron entered, nobody caught him from behind because he was just faster. We cannot be as fast at 40 as we were at 22. But if we speed train, which I'm not sure he does, I'm not sure if any of the NFL guys do as they get older because they're afraid of injury or something. At least if we speed train, we hold down that decline, that loss of speed. Just like gaining 1 mile an hour will make you a better football player, losing 1 mile an hour hurts. Really hurts.
That'll end your career.
It really will.
It makes you more injury prone too, because the slower you're moving, the more likely you are to get involved in traffic in football. Okay. The less likely you are to be able to get yourself out of a situation. Okay. It's not just about the random events. The random events are, obviously, you're never going to change that in football. You know, the random injuries, something that someone gets rolled up random.
That's part of the game.
Getting yourself out of traffic and being able to move yourself out of traffic is a big deal as you get older. And it's one of those things that slow guys are not able to do. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, to me, who obviously is going to be a Hall of Famer, he cannot do anywhere near what he could do before. And now maybe the Achilles, obviously, maybe having a bigger effect. But in the end, it means he's slower. Like, it doesn't matter what it is that caused it. Age, Achilles, in the end, he's slower. Well, because he's slower, his process is slower. His escapability is slower. His performance is lower. So even though his release is almost just as quick as it used to be, it doesn't matter because everything else is slower. So with everything else being slower, even if his mind is as sharp, okay, and his release is still just about as quick, everything else in his process physically is moving slower. And I could see him going through it in his head on the side.
Oh, you can see it. You can totally see
what's
the process.
going on. That's what's going through his head. I think he's so good, so much above everybody for so long that he's can't make the changes, okay, that probably would be needed for him to be able. The only guy in the history of football that really never had to move that process along that much was because he was legitimately the slowest person and never moved, which was Tom Brady. So he was really stuck in mud all the time, and it was basically whether you can get to him or you couldn't.
You know what? Brady got faster.
Training.
Hell yeah, he did.
He literally got faster in his NFL career, which is amazing.
And that was something that he realized, right? Like he knew, he's like, look, if I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna have to figure it out. I mean, look, you can just look at how his body type changed from when he started to when he, you know what I mean? And how much he vested in himself to do those types of things. And he bought into all of it. And whatever it took to, like, I gotta get to this level to stay where I'm at, and then continue to trend this way, like I'm gonna do it. And kudos to those guys.
Conflict too, right? That was the conflict he had with Belichick.
Well, and also these guys, like, you know, these guys are willing to kind of do their thing, right? Yeah, he went to his own
training guy, which he obviously felt
was better,
was elongating his career, right?
Correct.
With whatever he was doing, which is probably a version of what Tony's talking about. You know what I mean? The way he was trained, it's some version of that, right? That was the conflict. Belichick is from the
old school, like, hey, we got to do it this way, we got to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, and look, I understand where guys, their training stuff comes into it, but if you're telling me that, like, I can improve my longevity, which ultimately, like, is going to keep me in the league and make me a lot more money, like, then I'm going to do it. You know, I mean, you look at some of these guys like LeBron and Derrick Henry who spend all this money on their bodies and things like that. Like, yeah, like I'm making a check, and like some of this is going to go into continuing to make that check. So yes, I need to invest in myself and my body and my training and all this other kind of stuff, like, because longevity is the key to it all, especially in football where, man, 3 years, hopefully you're still in the league in 3 years.
You know, that's why Saquon Barkley called me at the end of February last year. You know, he says, I feel like I've lost a step. I'm injured too much.
Yeah.
And you know, and he wanted to know what to add to his workouts. And I talked about subtraction, of course. And
yeah,
I've never seen Saquon ever look faster, younger.
He looks great.
Leaner. Faster, younger, leaner. That speed may be the tide that lifts all boats. We've kind of
we talked about it.
But it's also the fountain of youth. And And I think that Derrick Henry's another guy.
Oh.
I guarantee. My wife asked me yesterday, "Don't they speed test these guys?" And I go, "No,
if it's in their contract."
no. Once they're done with that combine,
yeah, they're never running a 40 again. I would be shocked to see how many veterans actually have run a 40 since, or track the measurables. Like, how many times have you done your combine stuff? You know, because you don't go into training camp anymore and say, all right, you know, we're testing today. What's your max this? What's your this? What's your time? Not happening, dude. That doesn't work like that anymore.
It was, I can't remember, 10 or 15 years ago, they had this idea, like all the free agents could come together for like a combine, like as veteran players. They did that one time and no player ever went back because there were some fullbacks like were running 5.2. I mean,
I mean, think about some of these guys, right? Like once you get that second contract, like, you know what I mean? Like there aren't many people that are continue to stay hungry or to kind of, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't happen like that. And now you're paying this guy all this money and I'm running a faster 40 and I'm more in shape and I'm ready to bring it. And like, how do you justify that? That's a GM. That's an HR move.
Yeah. And David Montgomery's another guy I have personal information about because he trained with Chris Corfist. And it was right before his contract year with the Bears that he got together with my business partner and he got David was running 20.9 miles an hour top speed. He's never been real fast. I think he ran 4.67 at the combine, and Chris in 8 weeks got him from 20.9 to 22.1. And the guy was so smart, marketing genius. He went to every Chicago TV station saying that if he could run the 40 over again at the combine, he'd run a 4.4 because he'd been working with the world's greatest speed coach, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? He hit like 20.9 on a run the next year wearing 12 pounds of pads. And that used to be a ceiling when he was wearing like track stuff. And
right.
So because of that, if you watch David Montgomery now, he looks every bit as fast or faster than he did as a rookie.
Hell so
yeah. Once again, like speed is not set. You can gain a mile an hour or you can lose, and it really makes a difference.
No doubt about it. It's funny when I talk to coaches when I'm going to bring kids to places and I ask them about what they do. I want to know that they're not just trying to bury the kids, like
right.
And then I'm going to go watch. And if I see that they do that, just my whole thing.
Because we've seen it, right, Dave? How many times do we look at these trainers? We do it
exactly
all the time.
I'm not going to get mad at you if my kid doesn't come out of here like I want him.
Yeah, that's not. Better. Yeah,
I don't want him to have a heart attack. Okay, I want him to get better, and that's like the most important thing. It's tough to get it through. I talked to a QB coach because I'm looking to bring a couple of kids to a QB coach, and this one guy, someone recommended this guy to me, and I have guys that I like, but there's someone close to me that they recommended. I called the guy up, and he says I need to do an evaluation before I. Okay, that's fine. He said it's a 4 to 5 hour evaluation. I said 4 to 5 hours of what? He said I put him through all these different things, drills and all this stuff, 4 or 5 hours. I talked and I listened to him. I said, yeah, I don't think it's for me, But the first thing that went up in my head is, first of all, what are you doing for 4 to 5 hours? Second of all, how are you going to be able to evaluate a kid that's exhausted? I mean, after the first 30 minutes, he's probably exhausted. Maybe before that. And are you trying to crush his arm? Okay. I mean, what? So this is a guy who played at a very, very high level. Very, very high level. And I listened to it and I'm like, this is absurd. Like, absurd. And when I listen to other guys talk about things, it's like, I'm going to give you the same amount of money whether you take him for 45 minutes or an hour. I try to tell them. It doesn't do what needs to be done to get them better. If it was 30 minutes and he got better in 30 minutes, I don't care. You know what I mean? My thing is whatever your fee is your fee. Okay, I'll pay your fee. My job as a person paying your fee is I want to see results in the right way, not results exhausted, not results, like anytime my son says to me the next day, if I do some work with him with quarterback stuff, if he says to me that his arm is sore the next day, it's one of two things. Either I threw with him too much, okay, which could be the case. I made him throw too much, or he's not using like his body enough, and it's probably a combination of both, probably, okay? But the first thing that goes off his mind is we threw too much. That's the first thing. Not, oh, his arm has to get – now, I do things to get his arm stronger and his body stronger and those kind of things for a young person, right? But my first thing is your thought has to be opposite of what everybody in the old school way of thinking is. Your arm is sore. You're not strong enough. Let's weightlift to death so you get stronger so you can throw longer. That's what the normal answer is, right? That's what – you're not strong enough. No, we probably threw too much, or you didn't use your body enough, or it's probably a combination of both. We probably still threw too much. Maybe you're not using your legs and your hips and all those kind of things as well, but we threw too much. That's the bottom line. And is a sore arm a good thing? No, it's not a good thing, okay? Because what happens is I can't have you throw the next day. If I can have you throw, this I learned from you. If what is I have to figure out, what does it take to throw the football that you're able to get better and continue to throw, just like you talked about with sprinting? If I could keep them doing something each day and they're not getting sore and they're able to continue to develop, in the long run, they're going to get a lot better. Same thing with throwing a football, right? And it's the same exact thing. If I can throw day 2 and day 3 and day 4 and day 5, I'll actually have more throws after 5 days than it would if I threw them a million times day 1 and he can't throw. Can't throw. Or he's hurt. And that's one of the things I think that you teach that is so valuable. This obviously applies to speed, right?
Yep. What I say is never let today ruin tomorrow. It's a pretty easy thing. If that's what you do when you play the long game. And, my friend Les Spellman says that if you make a profit every day, you never go broke. I love sayings like that. I love James Clear in Atomic Habits says, if you're 1% better every day.
That's it. That's all it takes.
7 times better as a human after a year. Now, if you get 1% worse every day, you're like at 0.03% of your original self. Just 1%. And the last one, I love this too. Let's say you're starting lifting and all you're lifting, benching is the bar. Could you possibly add a pound a day and lift that? Well, if you could, you're going to be one hell of a bench presser.
Damn right.
Right. So just we have to accept small gains. We cannot do what I used to do at the craps table, where you go with $100 and you try to turn it into 1,000
right away,
because that's really dumb. Like you will go broke every session that you try to turn 100 into 1,000. It just doesn't work that way.
No, it's 100%, and that's the most important point. That is incremental gains that give the most over time. Are you the Lions receiver, St. Brown?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the fathers, how he trained them, and all these kind of things. But the only thing, so I'm sure as a bodybuilder, he did a lot of things that probably shouldn't have done. But the one thing that I thought that was enabled them to succeed, even though he probably did a lot of these things according to bodybuilding incorrectly, the one thing I thought was the right thing right from the get-go, of all the stuff he said, something like, But the thing he said that was great was, he said, I started them when they were 5 years old, and I started them, it was a piece-by-piece process. Now, as a former bodybuilder training people, I'm sure he made a lot of mistakes in the style of doing it. But the thing that he nailed was starting that process and doing a little bit at a time as he was building them up. He was thinking about what for him was the end goal. I don't think his end goal was 10 years in the NFL for them. I think his end goal was to get them to the NFL, right? And then from there, they will do what they need, whatever they think is best, right, as adults. But that incremental, it stood out to me in when he talked about that. And his thing in learning was the same thing. When his wife was the one that teaches them. His wife is German, and she was responsible for the learning part. And she taught them one by one different languages incrementally from the time they're very little. They speak 5 languages, these kids, right? So they probably made a million mistakes, because I'm sure as a bodybuilder, he probably trained them to death at times and all those kind of things. But his overall thought process was the thing that actually got them there. It was the incremental development over time, even though he probably tortured them at times and had to figure out all these different things. But it was that incremental that's the thought process, that 1% gain, that really point X% gain each and every time that is making the difference over the long haul. And it's very, very hard for people to understand that. How many times does a kid start out as the best player in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade and make no development?
None.
Because they thought they arrived. It wasn't that. Yes, sometimes they have puberty, but the thought process was, I'm there. Not, okay, I'm better than everybody right now. Where am I going with that? The thought process when these kids who stop developing in 8th and 9th grade, well, it doesn't mean that they were going to be better than the kid who obviously physically gets much bigger, but they can still make incremental gains. What happens is they usually jump out of the sport because they say to themselves, I peaked. No, you didn't plan for the long term.
Correct.
You were good when you were dominant without doing anything, or because you were physically superior as a younger person, or you developed earlier, whatever it is. But you didn't develop for the long term. It's
what I would probably react to that with, and I know all about what they've done and stuff. I think that I think the kid was a freak speed wise.
Oh yeah.
And maybe like the genetic side for the
Right.
speed took care of that, and then the strength thing really helped him. And I have a feeling like maybe one of the best things they did, along with that incremental 1% a day type of thing, is that he probably fell in love with work. He fell in love with training,
the process.
Yes. And I sometimes make fun of trust the process, because I think a lot of bad process coaches use that as a crutch.
Something bad.
Believe in me, all this work we're doing is going to pay off.
Well, it gives them time to not plan for the future, right? It gives them that window of mediocrity, or where they can just kind of just play around and be like, yeah, just trust me. Meanwhile, they're still trying to figure it out. That's exactly. I get it. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
I do think that that we can fall in love with the process or the training that is required, but I think that then as coaches, we have to create a process, a system of training that's lovable, and I think that's one of our keys.
Absolutely, and adapting that into the sense that not every kid is going to be like St. Brown, who you probably think will fall in love with the process, right? Is around it. The fathers obviously love working. There's some sort of genetic enjoyment for the actual training.
When both of the sons are in the NFL,
right. They obviously, as
genetics play a role, but something else clicked.
Right, working out was something they enjoyed. It was a family thing, right? So not everybody is like that, and be able, you're right, to build that enjoyment into it is an important thing. No, it's absolutely phenomenal. 100%. I'm curious, and kind of because I don't want to hold you up. As far as how you're continuing to spread the message, because I see you with Carl Lewis, I see you. Could talk about all the different things you're doing to continue to spread the message.
Well, I have a book coming out later next spring. I've been 99% done with it for about 6 weeks now, and I'm probably going to just have to send it off. I was given a nice advance for it, so it's going to have to happen. So that's cool. And then we run a clinic on December 6th and 7th. That is the most unique clinic, I think, in the nation, called the Track Football Consortium, where we have like 1/3 football coaches, 1/3 track coaches, and 1/3 like S&C type people. And it's pretty cool that anybody that comes, you only get to see 9 live sessions, but we have 27 sessions. So everybody that pays the $199 gets 27 hours of video from really good people like Dan Casey, who's just a brilliant football mind. Yeah. Brian Kula that trains McCaffrey and the heptathlete Anna Hall. We have Les Spellman coming in. We have Chris Corfist, myself. We have several sprint-based football coaches. We have 3 state championship track coaches from last spring coming in from different states. So anyway, it's a really diverse thing. And we talk about living in your silo. This helps you to get out of your silo, like to get away from, like the people who just echo everything you say.
Yeah. Yep. So the repeaters.
Yes. And so this is our 21st track football consortium. And it's been just a huge thing. That's where Carl Lewis spoke several years ago. Stu McMillan spoke. We've had great people, but then also we are doing a sprint-based football clinic, just like we did in Dallas last June. We're doing one in Saraland, Alabama, down by Mobile, and that's in like January 17th. And then January 31st, we're doing one in the Nashville area at Ravenwood High School. And what we do is we basically coaches a new way to coach football that if it did not win, would not be a thing. And then I'm lucky to also I'm speaking several times at 2 different Glacier football clinics, one in Baltimore and one in Pittsburgh. So
awesome.
And I'm doing all that crap at the same time. I'm coaching a track team. So my track team doesn't do a whole lot on weekends. You know what I mean?
We're going to have to, and I got to talk to Derek about this. We got to figure out, we got to get you down here in New Jersey and try to get something there, maybe attach it to one of the football clinics that they have here, right?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Because that would be good. What's the big one in football in the in the spring that all the coaches go? That's one of the ACs. Is that Nike or is that Glacier?
No, it's Glacier.
Oh, it is Glacier.
Yeah.
They do one in Atlantic City. Yeah, I'd like to get you to. I would love to see if you could come to the New Jersey Coaches Association one that we do that we run up here. Too. That's they do at Iron Peak Sports over in Hillsborough. It's kind of sponsored by. I mean, last year it's a lot more. It's a lot of coaches, more like college football coaches. But I think there's always that that speed and that aspect of it that needs to be there. So I mean, I'm going to look into it. Definitely, it would be awesome because I just think more guys need to hear you speak about it and kind of like show it, because I just think like that's how we drive it home. And I just think so many people would benefit from it. And not only like I want the athletes to benefit from it because they deserve the best that it is. And I just feel like this system, for what I've seen from my athletes, like it's just, it works wonders.
It's win-win. It's a win for coaches.
Absolutely.
For athletes, maybe win-win-win because it actually wins games as well. So
that too. Yep.
That all goes together. I've never said no to a clinic. I've spoken for free. I'm going to speak next fall in Brazil. I spoke in the summer in Ireland. It's really I will go anywhere in order to teach and coach, and it stirs my blood. And I love talking with you guys.
Appreciate you, Coach. I really do.
You're the best, man. Really, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Coach.
Anytime.
We'll see you soon, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Get after it, buddy.
Yep.
All right. Bye. All right. That was phenomenal. Once again, phenomenal.
He's the best, dude.
The best. Let me get us off this one. Yep. Okay. I think I'm getting hollered at about my Husky Huddle podcast, but I can't get off of Tony. I love listening and learning from him. So
go do your thing.
They can talk about the UConn football without me for a few minutes. All right, let's get off here, and then we'll when are we back? What day?
When are we back? Friday.
Friday, we're back. All right, cool.